In the bosom of one of those spacious coves which indent the eastern shore of the Hudson, at that broad expansion of the river denominated by the ancient Dutch navigators the Tappan Zee, and where they always prudently shortened sail and implored the protection of St. Nicholas when they crossed, there lies a small market town or rural port, which by some is called Greensburg, but which is more generally and properly known by the name of Tarrytown. I've loved The Legend of Sleepy Hollow since I was a little kid, and I've always wanted to visit Tarrytown. After lunch, I drove to the first stop on the literary tour I had planned. This is Sunnyside, the former home of Washington Irving. I had already purchased my ticket online the day before for $20. It's a couple of dollars more and a lot more hassle if you buy a ticket in person the day of. I checked in and the lady who scanned my ticket gave me a wristband and a flyer and told me a little about the tour and where to go. Next to the check-in area was the gift shop, and there was also another building where there was a short film playing on a loop, which was a shadow puppet version of The Legend of Sleepy Hollow. I can't tell you how the film was though, because I forgot it existed 5 seconds after I was told about it at check-in, and I only just remembered it while writing this voiceover. During the house tour, the other tourists and I entered the house in groups of about 4 people at a time, and each group entered one area of the house at a time. In each area, there was a different tour guide who told us about the rooms we saw. There was no video allowed inside the house, only photography, so I tried to take as many decent photos as I could while they hurried us along. This is Irving's study, and most of the things in here did actually belong to him, other than the few things that are modern Halloween decorations. The tour guide said that Irving loved taking naps and would nap on the small sofa at the back of the room, and when the house was full of guests, he would often sleep in here so his bedroom could be used by a guest. I asked how old the newspaper on the chair was, and I can't remember now the exact year the guide said the paper was from, but it was 1800 something, and it was an authentic antique. Once he said that, everyone oohed and awed and took photos of it. The year isn't visible here on the newspaper because of how it's folded. I checked. This is the dining room, and you can see they have it set up how it would have been for a large dinner party, and they have an illustration on display of the Van Tassel feast from The Legend of Sleepy Hollow. Here's a sitting room, and in here they currently had on display this painting, which was gifted to Washington Irving and is a depiction of Ichabod Crane and Katrina Van Tassel. Here's a little pantry door that I managed to snap as they herded us upstairs up this very narrow staircase. That's the original tile floor, by the way. Everything in the house was very compact, typical of these very old houses, and here's a blurry shot of my legs so you can see the width of the staircase in comparison. This was Irving's bedroom at first, but after the train tracks were built right outside the window, the noise from the train going by was so loud in this room that he switched to a different bedroom. This is the bedroom he moved into, and I believe they said that he passed away in here. In the wardrobe, they had this pressed flower on display for the first time. This flower is from 1859, and it's actually a memento from Irving's casket. Here's another tiny little bedroom. We went down the hallway, which I thought had a really cool looking design with all these different shapes and angles, and into the area that used to be the servants' quarters but was converted into more guest bedrooms. Apparently there were a ton of relatives living in this house for a while. Here's a painting of Ichabod Crane that the tour guide said she thought was way too flattering, and I agree. Side note, in case anyone forgot, in the original story, Ichabod Crane is a newly arrived in town creepy weirdo schoolteacher who likes whipping the students and decides he wants to marry teenage heiress Katrina Van Tassel as soon as he sees how rich her dad is. So he starts creeping on Katrina, thus pissing off her favorite suitor, local Chad Himbo Brom Bones. The story is told mostly from Ichabod's perspective, but he's the villain. Brom is the hero, and I love the 1999 movie, but Tim Burton did Brom so dirty in that movie. Anyway, from here we went down the very compact back staircase and into the kitchen, and then down a hallway past various other pantries and rooms, and emerged next to the back porch, where we were free to sit and chill and take in the view of the Hudson and the railroad tracks. I put on a hoodie because I was getting rained all over, and got ready to head out on the next part of my adventure. Oh my god. That place was so quiet when I first got there. By the time I was done touring the house, the gift shop was poppin'. So I'm headed now into town, where I'm gonna try to park and kind of just do my own walking tour, I guess. Get out of the street, chipmunk! And a squirrel at the same time. Google Maps is saying that some of my destinations are currently as busy as it gets, so we'll see. Tarrytown? More like Traffic Town, am I right? Not far from this village, perhaps about 2 miles, there's a little valley, or rather a lap of land among high hills, which is one of the quietest places in the whole world. From the listless repose of the place and the peculiar character of its inhabitants, who are descendants from the original Dutch settlers, this sequestered glen has long been known by the name of Sleepy Hollow. The whole neighborhood abounds with local tales, haunted spots, and twilight superstitions. Stars shoot and meteors glare oftener across the valley than in any other part of the country, and the nightmare with her whole ninefold seems to make it the favorite scene of her gambols. The dominant spirit, however, that haunts this enchanted region and seems to be commander-in-chief of all the powers of the air is the apparition of a figure on horseback without a head. It is said by some to be the ghost of a Hessian trooper whose head had been carried away by a cannonball in some nameless battle during the Revolutionary War, and who is ever and anon seen by the country folk hurrying along in the gloom of night, as if on the wings of the wind. His haunts are not confined to the valley, but extend at times to the adjacent roads, and especially to the vicinity of a church at no great distance. Indeed, certain of the most authentic historians of those parts, who have been careful in collecting and collating the floating facts concerning this spectre, allege that the body of the trooper having been buried in the churchyard, the ghost rides forth to the scene of battle in nightly quest of his head, and that the rushing speed with which he sometimes passes along the hollow like a midnight blast is owing to his being belated and in a hurry to get back to the churchyard before daybreak. Such is the general purport of this legendary superstition, which has furnished materials for many a wild story in that region of shadows, and the spectre is known at all the country firesides by the name of the Headless Horseman of Sleepy Hollow. It was the very witching time of night that Ichabod, heavy-hearted and crestfallen, pursued his travels homewards. All the stories of ghosts and goblins that he had heard in the afternoon now came crowding upon his recollection. On mounting a rising ground which brought the figure of his fellow traveler in relief against the sky, gigantic in height and muffled in a cloak, Ichabod was horror-struck on perceiving that he was headless. Away then they dashed through thick and thin, stones flying and sparks flashing at every bound. An opening in the trees now cheered him with the hopes that the church bridge was at hand. If I can but reach that bridge, thought Ichabod, I am safe. Old Gunpowder sprang upon the bridge, he thundered over the resounding planks, he gained the opposite side, and now Ichabod cast a look behind to see if his pursuer should vanish according to rule in a flash of fire and brimstone. Just then he saw the goblin rising in his stirrups and in the very act of hurling his head at him. It encountered his cranium with a tremendous crash. He was tumbling headlong into the dust, and Gunpowder, the black steed, and the goblin rider passed by like a whirlwind. It was a mile from where I parked my car to the old Dutch church, which was the farthest point that I walked to. Like, literally, that was the actual distance. So I definitely got enough walking in today, especially with some of these hills. Here's the Sleepy Hollow Middle School and High School building, and I didn't even think about what their mascot would be ahead of time, but I can't believe I didn't see this coming because, I mean, come on, what else would it be? The story of this incident is also mentioned in the Legend of Sleepy Hollow, just briefly, as another haunted site that Ichabod is scared of. I hadn't had anything to drink since that smoothie earlier in the day, so I stopped into this grocery store that I passed to get enough water to sustain me on my drive home. And then I made it back to my car, winded and sweaty, and got back on the road. In one part of the road leading to the church was found the saddle trampled in the dirt. The tracks of horses' hoofs, deeply dented in the road, and evidently at furious speed, were traced to the bridge, beyond which, on the bank of a broad part of the brook, where the water ran deep and black, was found the hat of the unfortunate Ichabod, and close beside it, a shattered pumpkin. It is true, an old farmer who had been down to New York on a visit several years after, and from whom this account of the ghostly adventure was received, brought home the intelligence that Ichabod Crane was still alive. Brom Bones, too, who shortly after his rival's disappearance conducted the blooming Katrina in triumph to the altar, was observed to look exceedingly knowing whenever the story of Ichabod was related, and always burst into a hearty laugh at the mention of the pumpkin, which led some to suspect that he knew more about the matter than he chose to tell.